How'd that look?
Oh, amazing! How did it look? How did it look? Badass, dude!
Hello friends, so I recently went back and played the greatest Star Wars game, and yes, for the most part it still holds up. I played it on PC and I had to do some minor changes to get it to run, but otherwise it was pretty damn fun to return to The Force Unleashed. Now, in that video I did say I was going to go back and play The Force Unleashed 2, and I got the game on Steam. However, for the PC at least, it's completely fucking broken. The game crashes if you minimize it at all. The fantastic DLC, which was basically the Return of the Jedi with the what if evil ending of the game, isn't available on PC. Oh yeah, and the cutscenes for the game just don't work. So you'll end the first level on Kamino to be instantly teleported to Cato Nemoidia with no idea of how you got there, so you don't even know what you're doing. So with that, and also the case that, you know, one level is just a giant fucking cutscene, I thought I'd skip straight to Jedi Fallen Order. Now with the news at least that the sequel of Jedi Fallen Order is apparently called Jedi Survivor, it's time to take a look at what many consider to be both the best Star Wars game that's been released since Disney has bought the property, and also a great introduction game, if you will, to the mechanics of Souls-like games, like the ever-popular Elden Ring, Dark Souls, or Bloodborne. But not everything is perfect here, but it is still a pretty great game. So what is Fallen Order, and why should you play it if you're a Star Wars fan, or maybe why should you replay it? If for whatever reason you're not familiar with Fallen Order, well then let me help you put the setting around the game, if that makes sense. You play as Cal Kestis, portrayed by the great, I think he's pretty great, Cameron Monaghan from the real mediocre but somewhat well-cast Batman series Gotham, who's a Jedi hiding on a junker scrapper planet that's full of Clone Wars ships, and it also has a giant Sarlacc pit. Where have I seen this from before? I'm getting member berries. Anyways, you and your buddy Prath are helping scrap a Republic cruiser before hilarity ensues and your buddy is going to fall into the giant Sarlacc pit until, by reflex sorta, Cal uses the Force to slow his buddy as he's falling, which basically saves his life. But this also alerts the Imperial Inquisitors and they hunt down Cal. You'll be saved by an ex-Jedi and a pilot and set out on an adventure to obtain a Jedi holocron, which is known for having the location of Force-sensitive children to try and restart the Jedi Order, all while being chased by Inquisitors. Now obviously Jedi Fallen Order takes place between the events of Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, where the Jedi are either in hiding, corrupted and turned into Inquisitors, or just flat killed, which is already a great setting for a Star Wars game. We're seeing the Empire sort of in their prime, if you will. There's a bit of rebel resistance here and there, but not like we've seen with, like, say, Rogue One or the original trilogy. You'll visit planets that we've never seen before, but also planets that have changed for the worse with Imperial control. Sadly, while these planets won't be like Jeddah, like in Rogue One with stormtroopers pushing people out of the way in cities or towns, you will go to planets where giant mining operations are fucking up giant mountains because the Empire just wants to. Speaking of planets though, Fallen Order has a bit of a free roam aspect to it, kind of. You'll start off on the junker planet of Bracca, where we're introduced to Cal, before moving on to Bogano, a hidden planet from the Imperials where our main quest starts, if you will, before moving on to more familiar locations like Kashyyyk, or Dathomir, or Ilum, or Ilum, I don't know how to pronounce it. Either way, if you've seen the Clone Wars, it's that planet where the young Jedi go and get their lightsaber crystals from, but it's also the planet that turns into Starkiller Base from The Force Awakens. And he ends the good things I ever talk about the sequel trilogy.
I hate so much about the things that you choose to be.
There's also some new planets like Zepho, or a floating prison and gladiator arena, but there's also the planet Nur, which is basically the base of operations for the Inquisitors, which we see in the Obi-Wan trailer, and it's opposite Mustafar. Sort of, you know, where Anakin turned himself into a barbecued steak.
Bragg barbecue tastes so good, make you want to slap your mama. Don't it, Willie? Yeah, boy.
Each planet not only has some form of enemy to take on, but also platforming and boss fights and collectibles and upgrades and some new abilities to learn. Now when the game starts, Cal hasn't used his Force abilities in roughly 5 years into the story, and obviously by telling the age of Cal in the game, he was a Padawan during Order 66. And yeah, if you've played the game too, it's pretty fucking obvious, but as Cal hasn't used the Force due to hiding in plain sight, but it's a bit like the Force Unleashed that Cal needs to learn or relearn his forgotten Force abilities like wall running and force push and force pull and double jump, and he sort of masters his starting force ability that's force slow, which is, the ability that Kylo Ren used at the start of The Force Awakens. I knew I wasn't going to talk about the sequel trilogies anymore, but that was kind of a cool power. Now, every time Cal remembers one of his abilities, you'll get a flashback of young Padawan Cal and his master going through the training, which is kind of cool. Also, Cal's old Jedi Master, Jaro Tapal, is a fucking Lasat too, so if you like Rebels, there's something cool as well. Now, most abilities make sense too, right? Like push and pull and double jump, all the abilities that we've used 1001 times when playing as a Jedi, but one of the newer powers, due to, of course, the new sequel trilogy, is force slow, and this can be used for freezing enemies in place, but also freezing environmental items like, say, fan blades, for example. Now, core gameplay is very much like that of a Dark Souls game, but it's also maybe a bit of a My First Souls-like game in that sense too. Combat is very much dodge, block, attack and use force abilities, as, well, you can see. Cal will have standard attacks and force abilities that he can use in combat, like he can push and pull people away, and sort of do a grip like you can in The Force Unleashed, but nothing to that extent of, awesomeness. Standard attacks, they're pretty straightforward, but will not only damage enemies, but it can also stagger blocking enemies, exposing them to, further attacks. For example, the run-of-the-mill Stormtrooper will die in one hit, but the Scout Troopers in Jedi Fallen Order work a bit like melee-based enemies with riot buttons, and they can block Cal's attacks. So you'll either need to parry their attacks to expose them, or attack them enough that they get tired and drop their guard. From there, like most games like these, and like, say The Force Unleashed, you're slowly introduced to new enemy variants for more Imperial Troopers like the Flamethrower Troopers or Imperial Security Droids or Probe Droids, and then there's planet life like rats and giant toads and giant crabs and slugs with, weird legs, and even a slug ram looking thing, or a giant fucking spider. Now, these all depend on what planet you're on. For example, if you're on Kashyyyk, you'll have to deal with giant spiders and fireflies and slug rams and Imperials. If you're on Dathomir, you'll have to deal with more spiders that shoot acid at you, the Night Brothers and Night Sisters, which are basically zombies at this point, and giant fucking albino bats.
But to the natives, Shikaka.
Obviously, again, in games like you'd expect, there are boss fights, and probably 90% of all boss fights in this game fucking slap. The start of the game has a massive Uncharted vibe and ends with Cal attempting to hold his own against an Imperial Inquisitor, and from there you'll be chased by not only the Inquisitors, but their personal guard, the Purge Troopers. Each Purge Trooper is a mini-boss in its own way, and they'll have different weapons and different attack patterns. But going back to real bosses, you'll basically have a boss on every planet, and these range from the Sith Inquisitors, a fallen Jedi, and some hidden rare enemy bosses that sort of guard loot chests on each planet. Speaking of chests, each planet has a huge variety of chests that unlock customization options for Cal, BD-1, the ship, the Mantis, and Cal's lightsaber. BD-1 is the cute robot companion to Cal who gives him hints and puzzles, opens up search crates, but more importantly works as the healing system for the game. You see, Cal holds on to healing stims that are held inside BD-1, and when he calls upon them when his health is low, it'll give him a health boost. Basically, BD-1 is like a robot version of a health flask in, say, Elden Ring. Now, you can find crates out in the world that will increase how many stims that BD-1 can hold, and once BD is out of stims, the only way to replenish them is by resting at meditation sites. Now, meditation sites work a bit like campfires in, say, Dark Souls, which not only restore your health and BD-1 stims, but also respawns all enemies except for bosses. But by far the coolest thing is making your own custom lightsaber, and it is one of Fallen Order's greatest features. You'll find lightsaber parts in chests scattered across planets, and you'll be able to swap out multiple parts on the saber itself. As you can see, and probably guess if you know me too, I spent an unhealthy amount of time creating and customizing lightsabers. The options available here for customization too are the same parts that you use in Disneyland when you're making your own lightsaber too, which is pretty cool and is a good marketing technique as well if you ask me. If you find enough parts or go to certain lightsaber workstation benchtops, you'll fix Cal's lightsaber and make it a double-edged lightsaber just like Darth Maul. Obviously, this changes the gameplay style, but by using one blade you'll deal more damage but you'll be slower, but when you're using both sides it's great for crowd control and for deflecting blaster bolts back at enemies. However, the saber gameplay and customization here in Fallen Order is one of the greatest things about the game, not to say that the game sucks, but it stands out. Each lightsaber crystal has a different ignition and swing sound too, and I was stoked that the green lightsaber crystal sounded like Luke Skywalker's saber from Return of the Jedi.
I see you have constructed a new lightsaber.
But there are some things that, personally, I wasn't a fan of with Jedi Fallen Order. For starters, yes, you can customize Cal, but sort of not really. You can change what poncho he wears and what color his undersuit is. All the ponchos are just recolors of say 4 or 5 different styles, and the undersuits are just recolors of his same suit. Sadly, there are some great concept art designs for Cal, in the concept art book, and there are some other characters that have great costumes and designs, but Cal's outfit is just kinda Hopefully we get something better in the sequels. Secondly, this could be a problem for some of you, but the main story or the plot or motivation for Cal, I thought was pretty It starts out with Cal being chased by Inquisitors, which is rad, especially if you've seen Star Wars Rebels, but from there it becomes a bit of a fetch quest going into old tombs or vaults to get information about a holocron that reveals Force-sensitive children. Basically a Force version of Ancestry.com, and starting the Jedi Order again. Obviously, this game is set before A New Hope, and we know that a new Jedi Order isn't started by them, so we know the hero story fails before it even begins. Thankfully, the ending deals with this rather than pulling us along into a sequel that will just follow this bland story setting. There's also a fair bit of re-tracking to planets multiple times. It's got the same problem as The Force Unleashed, as you return to planets when you've got new Force abilities and you can explore new areas. Once you unlock Force Pull, you'll then be able to reach new areas on Kashyyyk and look for Chieftain Tarful. When you get the rebreather so you can then swim underwater, you can then explore more areas on Bogano and search for treasure chests under the water. When you defeat the mighty Shakaka, you'll unlock the ability to climb certain walls and climb faster too, which again unlocks further exploration on other planets and continues your journey on Dathomir. But there are some things that don't overly work when it comes to say some key story events. For starters, yes, you can alter and change your lightsaber, but during maybe, depending on how you play, but let's say the first quarter or first third of the game, you can unlock and restore Cal's lightsaber to make it a double-bladed saber. The double-bladed saber is great for crowd control and dealing damage to swarming enemies around you, and during one key point of the story, and spoilers, because I am going to get into it, and I am going to start spoiling the story if you haven't played it, but you'll go to Dathomir and have a dark side Force hallucination, and you'll break your own saber going up against a dark Force version of your old master, and you can't use your lightsaber period, forcing you to run back to the Mantis. And this portion of the game works really well because, well, you're going through the game being a badass and taking on most, if not all, challenges to then be turning your tail and running, which was a good bait and switch. However, it doesn't really make sense in regards to, say, the lightsaber damage, if that makes sense. You'll crush your lightsaber during a Force fight with Jaro Tapal, and then you'll go to the planet of Elam, or Ilam, which again, it's Starkiller base, it's from Clone Wars, it's awesome. But you'll go to this planet to get a new lightsaber crystal to repair your lightsaber. But the ex-Jedi who's with you on your journey, Sig, gives you her lightsaber too, where you can then upgrade your lightsaber by fusing her lightsaber to your own. It gives you a cool upgrade where you can split your double blade lightsaber into 2 to deal some high damage attacks, and you can't run around with just 2 lightsabers in your hands. It's literally just an attack and then you snap them back together. But don't get me wrong, the whole Elam repairing a lightsaber thing and Sig gives you hers, sure, this portion of the game is really damn cool, but I feel like we should have gotten this maybe with the second fight with Trilla, the second sister Inquisitor, where you learn some new abilities and she flat up fucks you up and destroys your saber. And then you rebuild and recreate your own saber. Sure, we wouldn't have the mental battle between Cal and Jaro like we do on Dathomir, but getting fucked up for a second time against the second sister to when she breaks your lightsaber, that's kinda cool in my personal opinion. The pacing for having your lightsaber destroyed to near the end of the game for you to fix it and then finish the game about an hour later just doesn't really work for me. But Jedi Fallen Order does some fantastic things. For starters, this might be, at least in my opinion, the best lightsaber combat we've had in any Star Wars game. Now yes, I know a lot of people like Jedi Outcast or Academy's combat, and it's fine. But by having a light souls aspect of the game where the lightsaber feels nearly as deadly as it does in, say, movies and TV, works really well. Taking on stormtroopers and scout troopers is damn fun, and it feels like I'm using a lightsaber in the Star Wars universe rather than using a lightsaber in a game set in the Star Wars universe, if that makes sense. Every single character in this game is written, acted, and portrayed perfectly. When you look at a game like, say, Battlefront 2, Squadrons, or even some aspects of The Force Unleashed, you can't name more than 2 or 3 characters. But here in Jedi Fallen Order, each character is memorable, important to the story, and serves a fucking purpose. The Inquisitors are as imposing as they are in Rebels, and we get some fantastic plot and character development with Cere and Trilla, with Trilla being Cere's old apprentice before she transformed into an Inquisitor. The Night Sister Merrin and Malicos' story on Dathomir gives us a great story of loss and manipulation and corruption. We see Saw Gerrera's partisans causing foaming chaos on Kashyyyk before just leaving the Wookiees high and dry. Meanwhile, Cal is reconnecting himself to the Force and relearning what he's forgotten while taking on Inquisitors who are constantly hunting him down. Now, obviously, when we relearn or learn our abilities again, we get scenes of young Cal Apprentice, like learning his Force abilities with Jara Tapal teaching him during the era of the Clone Wars, and it's kinda cool. And what hits even harder though, is the Purge. We walk through corridors of our old Jedi cruiser waking up and chatting to clones who are just, the clones like they are in the Clone Wars. They're welcoming and they're friendly and they're friends with Cal. Only for Order 66 to happen, and that's where this game fucking slaps. The music, and I'll get to that, but the music and the setting and the level design and how it all ends is written beautifully. Speaking of music, this has got to be one of the best scores written for a Star Wars game and for a video game. Sure, God of War's music is great, as is Halo and Gears of War, and Doom has a fantastic soundtrack, but Fallen Order has its own Star Wars-esque music with using notes hinting from John Williams' music, but it's also chilling music on its own. I mean, the music for the Inquisitors has taken real estate in my brain.
Somewhere. I recognize that stance. Perhaps you've had some training after all. Who's your master? Padawan? Someone I killed, perhaps? What Jedi gave their life so that you might live?
It's free real estate.
We also got some fantastic planets here, going to Kashyyyk during Imperial occupation, or whilst Saw Gerrera's partisans are assaulting Imperial foundations, which is pretty damn cool. We go to Elam or Ilam, however the hell you pronounce it, after the purge of the Jedi in a frozen temple. Again, awesome. But best of all is the fortress of the Inquisitores on the planet of Nur, which is right opposite Mustafar, where Darth Vader's castle is located, and it's pretty fucking cool. We're introduced to this fortress in Jedi Fallen Order, and we can see this fortress too in the trailers for the new Obi-Wan Kenobi series, which is pretty rad. And I hope this Obi-Wan series is rad. Please, please, God, be good. But again, massive spoilers, but the ending for this game, dude. You go to the planet of Nur to find the holocron that has the Ancestry.com Force-sensitive children that Trilla has taken. You'll see a Purge Trooper dojo, go through and inside the Fortress Inquisitores to take on Trilla for the last time inside a giant interrogation or giant conditioning room where former Jedi have turned into Inquisitors. Trilla's got some new attacks, and after taking her on, Cal and Cere try to sort of bring her towards the light, and we see Trilla's face freeze with fear, and she shits herself as we get fucking Darth Vader. And Vader, being Vader, flat up kills Trilla. We've spent the whole game relearning our Force abilities, upgrading Cal, and we've taken on a fallen Jedi on Dathomir, 2 Inquisitors, Purge Troopers, Wildlife, countless Stormtroopers, but we can't do jack shit to Darth Vader. The boss fight, if you can call it that, is fantastic. We do try to take him on, only for him to put in 0 effort in, and he fucks us up, and you're forced to either run or die. If you try to face off against him again, he'll simply just pick you up and crush your throat, or in my instance, he'll pick you up and throw you off the side of the map. You'll simply just need to run from him, and it works perfectly. We've spent the whole game moving forward in every fight to then just turn and fucking run when we actually have a working lightsaber. There's no reason for us to run, but we just can't do anything against Vader. The game wraps up the story with Cal, Seer, Grease, and Night Sister Merrin, who has joined your crew, all on board the Mantis deciding what they should do with the holocron, and sure, yeah, they can restore the Jedi Order, which could also potentially make a fuckload of Inquisitors and get a heap of children killed again, because, you know, that's Vader's kink. But anyways, Cal makes the best decision by just cutting the holocron in half. Sure, the entire main quest for the game ends with just Cal cutting a holocron in half, but it's probably the best way to wrap up this quest, with Cal simply just turning to his crew and saying, what's next? But, you know, what is next indeed? By the time you may or may not be watching, the Star Wars Celebration may have already revealed what's next for the crew of the Mantis. I for one hope with most Star Wars fans or people who generally enjoyed this game and can't wait to see what we have next. But Jedi Fallen Order is definitely a right step in the direction for Star Wars video games. When EA got the exclusive license for Star Wars games, Battlefront 1 was a disappointment to a lot of fans, but the DLC was great, and towards the end of its life, Battlefront 1 was pretty damn fun with heaps of weapons and heroes that felt like heroes. Battlefront 2 had a very poor reception to say the least, but DICE stuck with it and added heaps of free DLC to the game, and now people are still loving it and playing it. Star Wars Squadrons is a fantastic game, sure, but it's also very niche as the game was made for a quick single player experience and then just dogfighting modes with no real DLC added to the game. Sure, there was some additional ships, but after that it just wasn't supported and, you know, it sort of just...
She died.
But Jedi Fallen Order was a game that was a single player experience that wasn't broken or missing content or had additional content for purchase with launch. It was just a fantastic pick up, play, love that reconnected fans back to the fun Star Wars games. It was created by a team that is known for Titanfall, but actually Jedi Fallen Order wasn't a step in the right direction for Star Wars games. It was a leap. Soon I'll be comparing Jedi Fallen Order against what I consider to be the best Star Wars game in The Force Unleashed, and talking whatever I can about Jedi Fallen Order's next game, which is rumoured to be Jedi Survivor. Until then though, friends, whether you're still playing Battlefront 2 with friends or running around trying to find some way if Cal could hold his own against Vader at the end of the campaign, remember to play with each other and play with yourself.
Shish kebab, Shawshank Redemption,
Chicago!
you're out of there! Go on, you're gone. Go on.